A gruesome search and frayed nerves amid fears that some terrorists remain at large. This is special extended coverage of Attack on America on the CBS Morning News for Friday, September 14th. I'm Susan McGinnis in for Julie Chen. Here's the latest. Officials say some of the terrorists involved in Tuesday's attack may still be at large. 10 men detained at New York airports are being questioned. Another with a false pilot's identification is under arrest. The Pentagon may call up reserves for the first time since the Gulf War. Congressional leaders agreed to a $40 billion anti-terrorism aid package. President Bush visits New York today. More than 4,700 people remain missing following the attack on the World Trade Center. The threat of new collapses is hampering search efforts, but several firefighters were rescued alive on Thursday. Jennifer Jones is at Ground Zero. Jennifer, good morning.
Well, good morning, Susan. That is certainly good news. You know, since Tuesday's attack, rescue teams have been working around the clock, realizing the faster, the harder they work, the better their chances are of finding survivors. But on this early morning day, they've run into a problem, an interruption by Mother Nature. Still, they are on the site, still hoping for some sign of life. We have had some conflicting reports of 10 police officers underneath the rubble, still alive. However, we're still hearing some other reports that the fire chief is saying that they haven't gotten that information. So a dash of hope again for the rescue teams. Again, yesterday, those firefighters were found alive. Another good sign of hope. But then, again, when they learned that those firefighters weren't there on the original attack, that was another dash of hope, because that again said possibly that those people who were underneath that rubble on Tuesday may not be alive. So they're still pressing forward, hoping to find some sign of life. But again, as you know, nearly 5,000 people remain unaccounted for. Susan.
All right, Jennifer Jones in New York. Thank you. Investigators are now busy searching for other suspects who may be planning more attacks. Jim Stewart reports.
Police searched a house in Vienna, Virginia, where the terrorist hijackers who flew into the Pentagon might have stayed before the attack. It's unclear what they found. And in New York, one man is in custody and others are being questioned after a scare over fake identities that led the FAA to shut down all 3 New York airports. Meanwhile, the easiest part of this investigation may be over. Authorities are poised to release the names and photographs of the estimated 18 hijackers, but federal investigators are still not certain they have accounted for all the terrorist pilots.
The terrorists who seized controls of the planes all attended aviation school in the United States, some as recently as a year ago, and FBI agents were busy searching the former apartment of 2 of the suspects who were at the controls during the World Trade Center attacks. Using airport surveillance video, credit card receipts, and the passenger list, the FBI believes it has identified all the hijackers on the 4 flights.
Unless contradicted by evidence which we wouldn't anticipate, 2 planes had 5 hijackers and 2 other planes had 4 hijackers each.
What is not as clear, however, is whether the dead hijackers left behind some live colleagues who may have attended the same aviation classes. Sources say the flight school records are being closely examined.
We are continuing to develop an understanding of all the associates that these individuals had.
In other developments, sources say there is no evidence thus far that any other nation was involved in the attack. Some of the hijackers had lived in the U.S. for more than a year, say sources, and others were associated with the Islamic fundamentalist group believed to be responsible for attacking the USS Cole. Meanwhile, the collection of physical evidence continued, with agents recovering what reads like a suicide note from the rental car of one suspect, while in Hamburg, Germany, police raided an apartment there based on an FBI request. There were also some dramatic arrests like these at Newark International Airport, where 4 people were taken off a Saudi Arabian airliner, but it remains unclear whether they were associated with Tuesday's attacks. What is also not clear is just how much help the actual hijackers had, although agents assume it was a sizable network both here and abroad.
The number of associates is is significant, but I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to try and attach a specific number.
Federal authorities are expected to show America the face of the men who carried out these attacks. Agents are busily assembling photographs of all 18 hijackers, complete with their names and nationalities. They are expected to be released sometime Friday. Jim Stewart, CBS News, Washington.
A black box locator signal from the plane that hit the Pentagon has been detected, but searchers cannot reach it. The flight data recorder from the jet crash in Pennsylvania has been retrieved, and investigators hope it can add to what they already know about that plane. Bob Orr reports.
Tuesday's attack ended in rural Pennsylvania when the last of the 4 hijacked jetliners, United Airlines Flight 93, nosedived into the ground. But sources say as the wave of terrorism unfolded, it was that plane the Secret Service feared most after a telephone threat made it clear the target was Air Force One. When United Flight 93 took off from Newark at 8:43, Air Force One was parked in Sarasota waiting to take the president home from an education event. No one believes the hijackers ever intended to attack the president's plane in midair. But in just over an hour, both jets would be heading towards Andrews Air Force Base. At 9:35, United 93 veered from its planned flight route and headed back towards Washington. With the World Trade Center towers already on fire, the jet's erratic movements were enough to convince controllers that this plane, too, had been hijacked. Just 3 minutes later, at 9:38, American Airlines Flight 77 plowed into the Pentagon. The first hit in what authorities now believe was to be a double-barreled attack on Washington. Within minutes, at around 9:45, orders were given to evacuate the White House. On board Flight 93, a number of passengers, learning of the New York attacks and cell phone calls with families, decided to take back the plane.
On the last phone call, he said that a group of them were getting ready to do something. And then he hung up and he never called back.
In Florida, the president was told of the terrorism and cut short his visit. At 9:54, Air Force One took off for Washington. Flight 93, meanwhile, continued flying east into western Pennsylvania. And at 10:03, someone in the cockpit deliberately turned off critical radar information, leaving controllers in the dark about the movements of a jet that was now a flying bomb on a course for the nation's capital. Along Florida's Atlantic coast, Air Force One continued to fly north. But suddenly at 10:14, the president's plane turned to the west. About 6 minutes later, the fight for control on board Flight 93 ended as the 757 with 45 people on board crashed in an unpopulated field. Air Force One, now out of danger, continued on, landing at Louisiana's Barksdale Air Force Base at 11:45. The president defended the decision to divert Air Force One.
I know I took the appropriate actions as the commander-in-chief to be in a position to be able to make the decisions necessary for our government to handle the crisis.
There is also new information about the other hijacked jetliner that did hit the Pentagon. Republican Congressman John Mica, the chairman of the House Aviation Subcommittee, says he's been told that plane may have flown over the White House and even around the Capitol building before hitting the military headquarters. Mica called it, quote, sheer in-your-face terrorism. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
Most U.S. airports reopened on Thursday, but airline service is still not back to normal. The 3 major airports around New York City were shut down again after those men were detained. Passengers are facing much stricter airport security, which some critics say is long overdue. Vince Gonzalez reports.
Probably no one knows better than former Los Angeles police detective Bert Looper how easy it is to smuggle a knife onto a commercial passenger jet.
And I just tossed it in my briefcase along with my notebook.
Looper breached security at LAX in 1994 to test a theory in the O.J. Simpson case. Could Simpson have smuggled a knife onto a Chicago-bound plane? When Looper reported what he'd done to the FAA, he was surprised by the reaction.
The FAA was more concerned about this being revealed to the press and to the public as to the inadequacies of the security system at the airports.
Looper says as a result of FAA pressure, neither the jury nor anyone else ever heard about his flight with a knife.
The FAA chose to disregard the possibility that a knife or a weapon of any sort could have been put through the security checkpoints at any airline, in particular American Airlines.
One of the American Airlines jets involved in Tuesday's attack was hijacked by terrorists using knives. But experts say even if everything was done right with the security systems now in place, the hijackers might have still made it through. Even new security restrictions planned by the FAA may not be enough.
I think they're tepid and mild. For them to talk about plastic knives and curbside parking, to me, is, if it wasn't so tragic, would sort of be ludicrous.
As head of law enforcement for the Treasury Department, Martin Palner helped found the Sky Marshals. For a few years, the anti-hijacking program put armed undercover agents on almost every U.S. flight.
They should reinstitute the Sky Marshal program that we had in the 70s, which was immensely successful, and there never was a hijacking on any flight that my agents were on.
The government announced that as air travel resumes, armed federal agents will be back on every plane. Experts say better technology is also needed. Checked luggage already passes through new high-tech X-rays. Now it may be the passenger's turn. When this Hollywood action movie was released, the idea of passenger X-rays was science fiction. This is the new reality, the body search system. It can see almost anything that can be hidden on the human body: drugs, guns, and metal or plastic knives. It's so detailed, for decency's sake, the model used in this photo had to wear lead-lined underwear. But some say a balance needs to be struck between saving lives and securing the right to privacy.
That we have to be very careful not to give up too many liberties in response to this type of attack, because in many ways such a response would really play into the hands of terrorists.
While body search is not used for general passenger screening yet, we tried to talk to the president of the company that developed the system. We were told he was unavailable in meetings in Washington. Vince Gonzalez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
After attending a memorial service in Washington today, President Bush travels to New York to grieve with the first casualties of what he calls the first war of the 21st century. It's all part of an administration that is standing firmly on a war footing. John Roberts reports.
The nation must understand this is now the focus of my administration. But now that war has been declared on us, we will lead the world to victory.
From the Oval Office echoed in the scarred canyons of New York, the drumbeat of war spread across the nation and around the globe. In Congress, President Bush sought authority to commit the American military into harm's way. And he is working the phones, as his father did 11 years ago in the Gulf War, to build a global coalition against the terrorists who shattered buildings and stole lives.
We have just seen the first war of the 21st century, and there's universal approval of the statements I have made, and I am confident there will be universal approval of the actions this government takes.
Around the president, there is now a heightened state of alert. The motorcade route to a Washington hospital lined by police with automatic weapons. The security cordon around the White House again pushed back. Pennsylvania Avenue now off limits to anyone without a government pass. Mr. Bush would not talk about what administration officials say is growing evidence that alleged Saudi terrorist leader Osama bin Laden is to blame for Tuesday's attacks. But the White House did give more information about the threat against the president's life aboard Air Force One, saying the Secret Service received a telephone call in which Air Force One was specifically targeted. Even the aircraft's military code name was used. That explanation helped to dampen criticism that the president was seen as hiding by rushing to a bunker in Nebraska rather than return immediately to Washington. The elder President Bush, once the target of an assassination attempt in Kuwait, admonished his son's critics.
I've got to confess to being a little annoyed at the attacks on him for following security procedures, not rushing right back to Washington. But as you've seen in today's paper, there was some credible threats on the life of the president, indeed on the White House itself.
The president has made every effort to be visible in the past 2 days, visiting victims of the Pentagon bombing in the hospital after seeing the devastation for himself. And even as he sought to place America on a war footing, Mr. Bush became visibly upset about the monumental challenge confronting his young presidency and the nation.
This is a terrible moment. But this country will not relent until we have save ourselves and others from the terrible tragedy that came upon America.
Senior administration officials say that while Osama bin Laden is a suspect, they do not want to act prematurely. There may be other organizations involved, they said, adding they want to understand all the connections, not just one. John Roberts, CBS News, the White House.
The attacks are a tragedy that's being felt all over the globe as the world waits to see what form U.S. retaliation will take. Tom Fenton is in London. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Susan. Well, it's good to know that in times like this, America is not without friends. There have been expressions of sympathy and solidarity here in Britain and Europe and, in fact, all over the world, and there will be more today.
The British and the rest of Europe deeply share America's loss. The American embassy here has become a focus of their grief. Flowers and messages of sympathy have been pouring in from both the British and the American community here.
15,000 families or more than that are just destroyed for no reason. I mean, it's just real hard.
The British themselves lost as many as 500 of their fellow citizens in the terrorist attacks, and they are deeply shocked at America's far greater loss. In a unique gesture of solidarity, the ceremony of changing the guard at Buckingham Palace became a brief memorial service. The Guards band played the Star-Spangled Banner. A minute of silence was observed. The American ambassador was there with Prince Andrew, who was standing in for the Queen, who will attend a special memorial service in London today. In another gesture of solidarity, America's NATO allies have invoked for the first time the treaty clause that makes an attack on one member state an attack on all of them. If America asks for military cooperation to strike back at terrorism, there will be a swift and positive response. Meanwhile, there are a number of American tourists stranded in Europe. Weary passengers have been camping out at London's airports or have been offered temporary accommodations nearby. There have been no flights to America since Tuesday. Several foreign airlines trying to fly to America out of other European countries yesterday were forced to recall their planes. United Airlines has announced it will resume some flights from London today, but it may be weeks before international schedules are back to normal.
And today, the world will share America's Day of Mourning. People all over Europe will be observing 3 minutes of silence. And I must say, in all the years that I've been a foreign correspondent, I have never seen such expressions of sympathy and solidarity. Susan?
Tom, do you expect a big turnout for that?
There'll be a huge turnout, particularly here in Britain at St. Paul's Cathedral, where the Queen will be attending a special service.
All right, Tom Fenton in London, thank you. In Tokyo, the Nikkei index finished about 396 points higher overnight, about 4%. Other foreign markets seem to be holding their collective breath as they wait for U.S. stock markets to reopen. Market Watch reporter Alexis Christoforous has more.
As America tries to pick up the pieces following the worst terrorist attack in history, Wall Street plans to get back to business Monday morning.
In the course of the next few days, we will, together with the industry, do all of the required stress testing of our systems from an infrastructure standpoint, communications, power.
It's the longest the stock market has been shut down consecutively since the end of World War II, when the markets were closed for 2 days. The bond market did open for business in a shortened session with no disruptions. While some Wall Street firms have lost, in some cases, hundreds of employees in the attacks, they say they're ready to begin trading. But market officials say safety and security issues in the financial district are still too great to allow the exchanges to open. But when they do, analysts expect an initial sell-off followed by a recovery.
There is no indication of panic, so I think that investors will hold up and the market should be firm.
Investors can take some comfort in global markets. Stocks in Asia and Europe stabilized after initially tumbling. Oil prices fell as concern eased that oil supplies would be disrupted. Even gold, the safe haven investment in times of crisis, also dropped. And if history is any guide, Wall Street has come back from other catastrophic events, including the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and the 1993 bombing at the World Trade Center.
In 1863, New York City had the greatest riot in the history of the world, perhaps, and the body count is simply unknown. It was probably in the thousands. And the market promptly reopened, and it happened in the Kennedy assassination.
And with the Fed standing by, ready to pump money into the banking system as needed, market watchers believe, like our nation, Wall Street will also rebuild and emerge a stronger market. Alexis Christoforous, CBSMarketWatch.com.
Well, Wall Street is just blocks from the World Trade Center site, and for companies such as brokerage firm Cantor Fitzgerald, there is concern that the disaster could have far-reaching effects, as Leslie Stahl found out on Thursday.
Howard Lutnick would normally have been at his desk when the plane hit, but on Tuesday morning he was taking his 5-year-old son to his first day of kindergarten. Most of Lutnick's employees at the World Trade Center are missing, including his own brother, Gary.
I'm missing 700 families, 700 people, 700 people.
You're missing more than 2/3 of your company.
700 people. And it's worse because I don't know of any, not a single person who got down from the building, not a one. And that is just the most brutal statistic, and I'm the one who has to tell everybody. And I tell it to them, and I tell it to them, and I tell it to them. And
yesterday, you set up a center for the families in a hotel here in New York. What did you say? What happened in that room?
They're all looking for answers, and they look, as if somehow I can know the answers for them.
You're the company that when you ask, was anybody completely wiped out? You're the name. Cantor Fitzgerald. The company. What happens to the company now?
Our business is the bond exchange of the world. And
you may have had the largest stake in American Treasury bonds.
We're the market that all the banks and dealers and all the big names they go to buy and sell their bonds. I mean, last year we did $50 trillion in business.
So the bond market opened. How does it open without you?
I got my people together. There are 275 people who survived in New York. We have 1,000 people in London. And we got them together, and I asked them what they wanted to do. That this is what the Treasury wanted to do, and this is what the Fed wanted, and the Treasury said it would be important for America to reopen.
So you're opened. Your company is operating.
At 7 a.m. this morning, I had 260 people. They never slept. I don't know why they did it. I don't know why. They voted that they wanted to open the market, and they stayed up all night, and they worked every second of every minute. So instead of worrying about the person to the left and the person to the right, at 7 a.m. New York time, they opened the bond markets of the world because they wanted to.
Like so many other Wall Street firms forced out of their headquarters, Cantor Fitzgerald survivors are working in a temporary operations center. Theirs is in New Jersey.
Is there any sense in your mind and their minds that this is a way to fight back? To say, you didn't cripple us, you didn't destroy us, we're not going to let you succeed?
I think there's a little of everything. I think everybody's different. I think some people want to don't let them get away with it. And some people said, I cannot be at home. I cannot be at home. Other people said, I can't think about it. So I think it's everything. I think it's amazing human spirit.
On Saturday, NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange will conduct a full-scale computer stress test. Only if the system works will the Monday opening go forward. Even if the markets do open down on Monday, as expected, the mere fact that they're open will be seen by many as a victory.
The major firms of the world, the biggest banks and dealers, they all have issues. Downtown Manhattan is not a place where people are going, and it's not business as usual. The big banks, they all have issues. They're in their disaster sites. So I think Bank of New York lost its main site and its disaster site, so it's in number 3. So, these are not the kind of business conditions where people are going to go out and try to do a lot of business. What they're there to do is to show that the American financial system is bigger and when anything than anybody else can dish at it, and that the collective group of all the banks and dealers and firms like ours of the world can pull together, and they will make it work.
This is the longest closing of the stock market since World War I. When President Bush visits what was the site of the World Trade Center today, this is what he'll see. A giant, dust-covered, smoldering landscape. Round-the-clock search efforts continue, but hope is fading for the more than 4,700 people listed as missing. Right now, skies over Manhattan are cloudy, and it has been raining overnight. It has been hampering some of those search efforts, but some of that rain and clouds is expected to clear when the president arrives this afternoon. Some of you will cut away now for your local news. For the rest, we will continue with our special extended coverage of Attack on America. There is an added problem this morning at the World Trade Center blast site. Heavy rain and lightning have been hampering recovery efforts. But workers have put on their raincoats and they are pressing on. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is one of the key agencies now dealing with this tragedy. CBS correspondent Dan Rather spoke with its director, Joseph Albaugh.
Mr. Albaugh, thanks for taking time to do this. Sure. You spent time down around the World Trade Center. Tell me what you saw. Tell me what impressed you the most. Tell me what troubled you the most.
It's a horrendous sight. I know you're trying to do justice on television with the tape, but unless you visit the site, you can't really feel the gravity of the situation, the impact. I am concerned about the lives of people that may be still in the rubble that we're trying to rescue.
You think there are people still alive in the rubble?
Possibly. But time is working against us, quite frankly. You've got New York City's finest police department, fire department, members of our National Urban Search and Rescue teams. We have 9 in town right now. These task forces consist of 2 teams of 31 people each who are technically proficient with high caliber equipment to go in and find folks. People are moving as quickly as they can, as delicately as they can. This is still a crime scene. We have people in the building, and yet we need to start removing debris, which is estimated maybe 500,000 tons, which is a lot to move.
You met with these urban search and rescue teams during the day. What did they tell you?
It's tough inside. It's tough inside, and I worry about those folks going inside. They can only spend so many hours. Right now they're on 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off. Spaces are tight. Breathing conditions are difficult. Clogging their equipment for their own personal safety is one of my biggest concerns. Just fatigue sitting in with the entire city. So we're working on scenarios to make sure people get proper rest, proper counseling. Speaking of counseling, Mayor Giuliani and I today visited the family center, and those folks there, it's the toughest thing. They're looking for answers. There are more questions right now than we have answers. And I would ask that everyone just be patient. It's going to take time to search through all this. And if you could just see the questions and the hurt in their face, I wish I could relieve all that, but we can't. It's going to be a long process. But the amazing thing is this country has the spirit to pull through this.
We've heard all kinds of reports of other buildings about to collapse.
Right.
Give us some facts. Are there other major buildings teetering on the edge of collapse?
Possibly. We don't know yet. The structural engineers are in the buildings right now, city engineers, state engineers. I've asked General Bob Flowers to make sure that his structural engineers are available to us. The interesting thing is that whatever we can bring to the table, whatever Mayor Giuliani wants, he gets. Whatever Governor Pataki wants, he gets. That was my direct instruction from President Bush. We will make sure the city has what they need to recover in this process.
How long before the rescue, recover, and clean out the mess?
Weeks.
Weeks?
Maybe months.
Maybe months?
This is, 500,000 tons of debris. And yet we need to be dignified in the process, show proper respect to those folks who have lost their life.
Have you ever seen anything anywhere near like this in your life?
And I never want to see this again, and no one does. No one does. This is tough.
Characterize New York's response.
Incredible. Incredible. The devastation I saw when we all went down yesterday was massive, and yet driving down the street, New Yorkers were lining the street, and it was incredible to see that spirit. People applauding, yelling, words of encouragement. That's what's going to get us through this.
Bottom line cost in dollars?
Billions.
Estimate?
I have no idea. It's too early to tell.
As much as 15, 20 billion?
Possibly.
Sure, well, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Care, sir.
Good luck.
And you've been watching special extended coverage of attack on America. Again, President Bush will be heading to the New York area to personally inspect the damage at what was the World Trade Center site. Our coverage will continue in a moment.